locked up in your system. I let it loose. But why did you warn me?
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover vampires and all kinds of supernatural creatures. In this video, we're going to be looking at the movie Pulse from 2006. I don't know why, but this movie has always stuck with me over the years. I was pretty young when I watched it, probably around 10, and it terrified me. I distinctly remember watching half the movie through my fingers, but being very intrigued by the mysterious entities. Pulse is a supernatural horror film written by Wes Craven and Ray Wright. It is based on the 2001 Japanese horror film Cairo, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. The movie Pulse follows a group of friends who discover that something has invaded the world of the living through technology and is threatening to create a Bird Box level apocalypse. Let's take a look at what these mysterious entities are, if they're evil, and how they got into our world. The beginning of the movie introduces us to Maddie. She's hanging out with some friends and was expecting her boyfriend Josh to show up, but he's nowhere to be seen. Apparently he's been avoiding her all week. When she goes home, there's a message from Josh, but it's very strange. The next day she goes over to his house to check on him. He doesn't answer, so she grabs the spare key. When Maddie goes inside his apartment, it's a complete mess. The food in the fridge is rotting with maggots on it. He's also got plastic hung up all over the place like he's Dexter or something. Josh finally shows himself, and he doesn't look so good. He's very pale, and Maddie notices this strange black mark on his neck. She says everyone's been worried about him. Why hasn't he been answering her calls? But he simply says, "Stay here," and walks away. Maddie hears something and goes over to the closet and discovers his cat is locked inside and starving to death. She yells for Josh and goes to find him. When she walks into his bedroom, she is frozen with fear and shock. He took his own life with a phone cord hung from the ceiling. What is going on here? That night, Maddie has a strange dream about Josh. She says, "Josh, are you there?" And he responds, "I'm not me anymore. There's something wrong with me." Then whatever that black mark that was on his neck spreads across his whole body. Then she wakes up. Maddie is currently in college and the next day speaks with her psych professor about what happened, and she tries to pretend she's okay, but feels quite guilty. Her professor tells her she did nothing wrong and not to overanalyze being a psych student and all. She leaves and meets up with her friend Izzy, and they see a strange black stain on the wall being cleaned. This will be important later. That night, the group of friends are messaging each other in the group chat. They're talking about being there for Maddie during this difficult time, when suddenly, a message appears from Josh, and it says, "Help me." What's even creepier is it doesn't just say it once. It starts to repeat, help me," over and over. We fast forward to the friends talking about it the next day. They think it must be a virus, probably something on Josh's computer that's still logged in. Somebody should go over there and turn the computer off, but Maddie doesn't want to be the one to do it, so Stone offers to do it instead. Later that day, he arrives at Josh's and has to climb in. Once inside, he sees that the computer is gone. Somebody must have stole it. That might explain the messages. While there, Stone decides to take a look around. He goes to the room where Josh was found. He's visibly shaken when he sees the phone cord still hanging from the ceiling, as if they would just leave that there. Stone backs out and hears a strange sound come from the room across the hall. It almost sounds like talking. Stone approaches the door, but realizes it's been sealed shut around the edges with red tape. He pushes through the door and is greeted with the sight of Josh's bedroom. The red tape is also completely covering the windows. I wonder why he did that. Stone walks into the bathroom and sees it's dirty like the rest of the house. Then, hears a noise from behind him. He checks the room and it looks empty, but someone, or something, walks out of the shadows. It's a woman, walking in a strange and unnatural way. She almost falls and then teleports closer to Stone. When she teleports, it's almost like a glitch, accompanied by an electrical sounding noise. He runs over to the window and rips off a piece of tape for some reason, then jumps behind the bed. He looks under it and can't see her feet. That must mean, yep, she's on the bed. She slowly peeks over the bed with the face just out of focus, which I like. Unfortunately, I think they kinda ruined the effect with the jump cuts, but it's still pretty creepy. Stone yells in pure terror, and the creature, or ghost, does something to him. It looks like it performed the Dementor's kiss or something, sucking out his soul. The next day, Maddie is talking about how the day she went to Josh's, he seemed like a completely different person. She's also still getting messages from Josh's computer, so she calls Stone to see what happened. I didn't think he'd pick up, but it turns out he's actually still alive. When he does pick up the phone though, he sounds strange.
It's Maddie.
What's up, Maddie?
She wants to know if he turned off Josh's computer, but there's a long silence. He says he's been avoiding his computer, and that he's kinda down, then abruptly hangs up the phone. He could have just said the computer was gone, but instead acts all mysterious. We see as soon as Stone hangs up the phone, he starts crying, and he has a strange black mark on his arm that's growing, kind of like the one we seen on Josh's neck. That ghost, or whatever it was, didn't kill him, but it clearly really messed him up, and that's probably what happened to Josh. The question is, what did it do? And what is this creature? And what the hell is up with that red tape? The movie reads like a creepypasta. Maddie goes over to Josh's place to check on the computer and discovers for herself that it's gone. The landlord sold it because Josh was months behind on rent. Maddie threatens to call the cops, but the landlord gives her the name of the person who bought it and she tracks him down. Turns out his computer was purchased by Damon Salvatore. Only kidding. His name in Pulse is Dexter McCarthy. Maddie accuses him of sending the messages and says it's not funny. He tries to tell her that he hasn't sent messages to anyone. He tells her to look at something and pops his trunk. The computer has never been plugged in since he bought it. So who was sending those messages? A confused Maddie leaves, but later, Dexter is curious, so he decides to finally hook up the computer. When he turns it on, there's some static, and a message appears on the screen. Do you want to meet a ghost? He clicks the mouse and is greeted by multiple strange videos. It looks like a webcam stream or something. There's a guy with a bag over his head, another guy who looks right at the camera in a creepy way. Then, the last guy uses a pistol to take his own life, shocking Dexter, and he quickly shuts it off. He's probably thinking, what the hell was this Josh guy into? The computer did say ghost, so maybe that's what that creature is. The next day at school, Maddie opens up her locker and finds a package from Josh. I guess she hasn't checked her locker in a while. It was sent 2 days before he died. She opens up the package and inside is 3 rolls of red tape. The same red tape that was all over his room. Along with the tape is a note that says this: "It keeps them out. Don't know why. Jay." Tim is the first one to speak up and has a good question. Keeps what out? Well, we can probably guess Josh is talking about these ghosts, or whatever they are. Somehow this red tape keeps them out. That's why he had it on his window and around his door. Since Stone was attacked when he went in the room though, I wonder if he used the tape to trap the ghost inside. Izzy thinks that Josh was just going crazy, but Maddie is starting to think otherwise. She tells them that when she was talking to Stone, she got the same feeling as when she talked to Josh, so they must be afflicted with the same thing. In the background there's a TV, and we hear a breaking news story. It's about a recent cluster of people taking their own lives, but there doesn't seem to be any connection. First Josh, then all these other people, and the strange videos on Josh's computer. It must be connected in some way. Dexter finds Maddie and wants to show her something. The strange videos on the computer. They arrive at his place and he turns on the video. Dexter says he thought the video was just looping over and over, but it's not. They don't always do the same thing. Maddie sounds worried and asks him, "How did this get on there? How long have you been watching this?" Dexter replies, "All I did was plug in the computer." And I think the better question is, how long have they been watching me? What does he mean by that? The phone rings and Dexter gets up to answer it while Maddie continues watching the video. While watching the pistol guy, a strange figure appears behind him. Maddie sounds scared, like she knows this thing is bad. She gets angry and says, "Turn it off, turn it off. Why would you show that to me?" Dexter just wants to know why these videos are on the computer and wonders if it had something to do with Josh's death. Maddie reveals how he died, but again tries to pretend like she doesn't care and has to leave. Dexter also mentioned that he tried to delete the hard drive, but it wouldn't let him. We learned that Josh was really good with computers, a kind of hacker, and was good at creating viruses. Maybe he did something to the hard drive so it couldn't be erased. Or maybe something else is doing it. The next day, we see the campus full of people, and then a flash, and it looks almost empty. This phenomenon of people taking their own life is spreading. We see the classrooms look empty, and everyone is just pretending that nothing has changed. One of her professors tries to walk in front of the bus, and not long after, a woman jumps to her death right beside Maddie. Things are getting out of control. While on the bus, Maddie looks in the mirror and sees the same figure that she's seen on the computer. It seems like by viewing that video, she may have let something in. Later, while lying in the bathtub, she falls asleep and has another strange dream about Josh. She's following him through a rundown house, and again, he says there's something wrong with me. This time we also get flashes of that creature's face that Maddie's seen on the computer and in the mirror. She wakes up scared, but the terror doesn't end there. She looks in the tub, and between the bubbles, we see the creature's face. She screams and turns away, then the face turns into the scrubber. The concept for this effect is great. Unfortunately, the early 2000s CGI failed. Meanwhile, over at Tim's place, he's messaging in the group chat and wondering where everyone is. More than half the school has disappeared. While typing, his screen glitches out, and a message appears. He clicks, and for a moment, his friend Stone appears on screen. Then the computer returns to normal. So does that mean Stone is dead now? After seeing this weird video, Tim goes over to Stone's house to check on him and knocks on the door, but there's no answer. It's unlocked, so he goes inside and sees Stone's face on the computer. But then, from the corner of the room, Stone starts yelling out. He says, "I don't want to die. I don't want to do it myself." We can see his arm has started to fuse into the wall somehow. Tim tries to help, but suddenly, Stone is absorbed into the wall, leaving nothing but a dark stain. Just like the one we seen on the wall earlier. My guess is, when you're attacked by one of these entities, you get this curse with the black veins. Then, if you don't take your life like Josh, this is what happens. Tim is terrified and runs back to his apartment and immediately starts taping up the door in any way into his room. He runs at a tape, but it was just enough. He stands there for a moment, but can't help himself from taking a look. He pulls the tape off the peephole and looks outside. It appears to be safe, until a creature with a giant mouth face instantly appears and shatters the peephole. It must have been able to get in even through that tiny opening, so I think it's safe to say Tim is doomed. At school, Maddie is given another scare by the entity when she tries to go to the bathroom. She hears something in the stall next to her and puts her ear up against the wall, and we get a shot of the creature listening back. She tries to convince herself that what she's seeing isn't real, but it seems pretty real. Maddie goes to her psych professor again and he tries to tell her that what she's seeing isn't real, but then he gets to see it for himself. He's in his office when a video pops up on the computer. Then, the strange figure appears in his room. The camera cuts before we actually see what happened to him, but we can take a wild guess. Around the same time, in the middle of the night, Maddie's computer turns on all by itself and starts playing those strange videos just like Josh's computer. She's pretty creeped out, so she unplugs it and turns the screen around to face the wall. Then, the fax machine turns on. It prints out several sheets that appear to be nothing, but then Maddie puts them together, and it's that same face she's been seeing. The activity is ramping up really fast, and it seems like everyone is being attacked through their computers. We cut to this random guy, taping up his entire room like crazy. We don't know who this guy is right now, but we'll learn soon. Dexter tells Maddie to come over again, because he's recovered some stuff off Josh's hard drive, a bunch of powerful viruses he made, and video logs detailing what started all this. He was a hacker, and he decided to hack into the system of a man named Douglas Ziegler. In the video, he apologizes to Ziegler for hacking into his system, but now he needs to talk. They played the next video, and it's Josh once again begging for Ziegler's help. He says, "Whatever was locked up in your system, I let it loose, and I don't know how to stop it. I need to know what you had in there. I've never seen anything like it, but it's burning through every firewall. It's frying every circuit. I need your help." The next video, Josh is in a better mood because he got a response from Ziegler, and he thinks he created a virus that can stop this thing. He says, "Meet me at the library at 5. We get to see Josh go to the library. It's actually the opening scene in the movie, but I saved it for now because I think it makes explaining the order of events easier to understand. So this is what happened when Josh went to the library to meet Ziegler. He's walking through the school campus and seems paranoid. He's constantly looking around as if someone is following him. He stops for a moment and turns around, and from our perspective, we hear some static and see a figure appear in the mirror of this bike, but quickly vanishes. He is being followed by the creature, but he hasn't been infected yet. When going through security, he sees something on the security camera, but when he turns around, it's not there. He gets in an elevator and goes to the library. A dark, creepy library like the one from Ghostbusters. That's where everyone wants to be when they're being chased by a weird ghost. He keeps calling out the name Ziegler as he walks around. He looks down and he has a USB drive in his hand. This is the virus. Suddenly, the lights start to flicker. The cart starts to move by itself, and finally, books start to fall off a shelf close to him, as if they're being pushed from the other side. He slowly approaches the bookshelf saying, "Ziegler?" When he reaches the empty hole of books, There's nothing but darkness. He leans in closer, and a terrifying face lunges out at him. He quickly backs up and trips over the cart, unable to move. The creature approaches him from behind and wraps its pale hands around his face. Then quickly turns his head, and well, I don't know exactly what it does. Like I said, absorbed his soul possibly. So now we know what happened to Josh. He was attacked by the same creature that's after Maddie. Now back to the video logs. The next video log, he says this. I seen something in the library. I can still feel it. Like it reached inside of me. Like it took something out of me. My life. He then becomes angry, saying,
God damn it, why did you warn me?
The last video log, Josh sounds different. More like he did when Maddie came to see him. It's breaking me down. I feel like there's nothing left of me. I can't think. I can't move. I can't take the pain. I just can't. I'm not even me anymore.
I'm sorry, Maddie.
After watching those horrifying videos, they go out for dinner to talk. And finally, she puts together that the strange videos, the ghosts, and the deaths might all be connected. She also now knows that Josh wasn't crazy. He's seen something. She shows him the image that came through the fax machine, but he still doesn't believe her, saying that image that came through was probably just a prank. But she says it wasn't even connected to the internet. So how's that possible? Josh said he pulled something through. And Dexter cuts her off. What, he pulled ghosts through the Wi-Fi? It just doesn't make any sense. Nearby, a man hears their conversation and chimes in. It makes all the sense in the world. Do you have any idea the amount of data that's floating out there? The amount of information we just beam into the air? We broadcast to everyone where we are, and we think we're safe? The whole freaking city is going insane, and we're acting like it's nothing. Well, it's not nothing. It's something we don't understand. And it's coming for us. It's the end of the world. That's what it is. Sounds like this guy might be onto something. We see the news again, and they're saying a strange virus is affecting the internet service, and if you don't need your computer, to turn it off to avoid the spread. Not long after, they're talking about mass disappearances in multiple cities. Some people that are infected seem to be driven to take their own life. Others, like Stone, don't have the strength to do it, so they just fade away. And that's what's causing all the disappearances, because there's no body to find. The virus is starting to spread even quicker, and showing no signs of stopping. Tim calls Maddie, and sounds weird, just like Stone did. They're on a video chat as well, but when he talks, his lips don't move. That's creepy.
I just wanted to see you.
Maddie lives with her friend Izzy and goes to check on her, and finds that she's also been infected, but isn't all the way gone yet. She went downstairs to do laundry, and a four-legged demon thing came out of the washing machine and got her. This is the same creature that attacked Josh and is after Maddie. The other creatures we only see once, but this one we see multiple times. I wonder if it's some kind of leader or something. Before Izzy was attacked, she received the same message on her computer. Do you want to meet a ghost? So that kind of confirms that watching these videos leads to you being attacked. When Maddie finds Izzy, she says something very important. She says, they want what they don't have anymore. They want life. So these creatures feed on our life source. Maddie tries to call 911 for her friend, but there's no answer. And we see the 911 call center is completely empty. When Maddie turns back to comfort her friend, she vanishes into ash. Okay, let's finally get to the big question of exactly what these things are and where they came from. They found out Ziegler's name from the videos, so Dexter finds his address so they can track him down and get some answers. While Dexter is on the computer, a video of Josh pops up saying, the virus is inside. Inside. He has an idea and checks the inside of the computer and finds a secret USB drive. He tries to see what's on it, and there's a program called redtape.exe. This must have something to do with the entities. He tries to click on it, but is attacked for the first time. Luckily, he gets away without being infected and meets up with Maddie. She tells Dexter what happened to Izzy, and they immediately drive to Ziegler's address. While on the way, they're given a bit of a surprise. After the crash, they regain their bearings and realize the car that hit them is empty, but the seat is covered with ash. The car is destroyed and they have to walk the rest of the way now, and we see this city has gone full apocalypse. They run into a group of survivors trying to leave the city. The older woman says they came through the computer. We saw them. They heard it's only safe in dead zones. No Wi-Fi, no cell phones, no computers. That's interesting, she said. The dead zones are safe, implying these creatures can only exist where there's some kind of signal. The survivors keep heading out of the city while Maddie and Dexter keep going towards Ziegler's. They arrive at the address, and when they look up at the building, they can see one room that is the window covered in red tape. That must be him. They enter the building and go to his room, but there's no answer. They get the door open and the room is completely covered in red tape, but no Ziegler.
You're gonna let him in!
Okay, so he is there. He was just hiding in the closet, which is also all taped up. He runs across the room and immediately closes the door and starts taping it back up again. He says the slightest leak, the slightest hole. That's how. We know he's right because we've already seen this happen to Tim. They will get in any way they can. Ziegler wants to know who they are, and Maddie says her boyfriend was Josh. Ziegler immediately says that's the little prick who let them in. Dexter has to get a bit aggressive, but Ziegler finally tells them what happened. He says this: "It was a telecom project. It was my baby. It was super wideband. We found frequencies we didn't even know existed. Then they came through. We didn't know what it was at first. We thought it was radio wave interference. Then we realized there was a pattern to it. Every time we would try to monitor them, they would stop, or they would change frequencies. I mean, they were smart. They were reacting to us. And then we started to see things around the lab. Shadows can't hide underneath the desk. Shadows can't walk across a room in broad daylight." He begins to laugh like an insane person.
There was this tape.
We get some flashes of Ziegler panicking and taping up his room. "Red utility tape? Have you seen it?" He says, "It must have blocked part of the spectrum that they needed for transmission, so we could keep them out of a room. But we couldn't keep them out. I mean, they were coming through so fast, it was like a blur. The last thing you want, the last thing you ever want, is for them to get to you. Because when they grab a hold, they take your will to live. Everything that made you you, it's gone. Then come the bruises." When he says bruises, he's talking about the black marks that we've seen on Josh's neck and Stone's arm. Ziegler continues, "They spread all over. Your body dies right out from underneath you, and the next thing you know, you're a pile of ash. I saw it happen to Tillman. I saw it happen to Plummer." Maddie cuts him off asking, "What are they?" He responds, "I wish I knew. They already crawled in the entire regional network. They're everywhere. Cell phones, PDAs, we can't stop them." Maddie reveals they have a virus created by Josh to crash the entire system and possibly get rid of these things. Ziegler tells them the server is in a highly non-optimum place. The basement. Of course. But he adds, even if they make it, there's no guarantee it will even work. Maddie and Dexter waste no time though, and immediately head to the basement. They open the door back up to leave, and Ziegler freaks out, saying no, 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 no. He tapes the door back up, then runs into the closet, closes that door, and starts taping it up as well. He's not taking any chances. Ziegler just explained a lot of stuff, so I want to come back to it after I explain the ending so everything makes sense. Hopefully. Before they went to Ziegler's room, I noticed he removed all of his computer equipment and put it in the hallway. Yet, he kept a television in his room. That must mean they can't come through all technology. I doubt Ziegler would keep a TV in there if there was even the slightest risk they could come through. Maddie and Dexter make their way into the basement and are completely surrounded by the ghosts. They have to run to the elevator, but Dexter is separated by these creepy kids and Maddie is forced to go alone. I don't like calling them ghosts because it's not really what they are, but I don't know what else to call them. Anyway, this is the most of them we've seen so far. Usually we only see one at a time, but there's dozens here. I wonder if they've gathered here because it's like ground zero for them, where they first entered this world. Or maybe they're trying to defend the system. Maddie rides the elevator down, but it starts doing all kinds of weird stuff, bouncing between floors. It turned into the Tower of Terror from Disney, which isn't there anymore. Anyway, the entity starts to appear, so she's forced to climb out of the elevator. She gets to the bottom floor and has to walk down a long industrial-looking hallway with pipes. She slowly approaches the lab, and we see the creature is after her again. Maddie enters the room and there's large computer equipment all around. She approaches the computer on the desk and it's showing herself standing in the room like a camera's pointed at her. But there is no camera. We can see strange distortions around the room, like the ghosts are here right now. Or this is where they're able to come through. The entity starts to appear and Maddie is frozen with fear. It makes this horrible kind of screaming noise that's very unsettling. It starts to take her life force, or soul, and then she's teleported to another place. What I think is purgatory, or maybe hell. Josh is there, but she can't touch him. When he turns around, his eyes now look evil like the other ghosts. She is then grabbed from behind by thousands of hands, all the lost souls. We see back out in the real world, it is like Maddie's soul is being pulled out of her body. We can see the face on her actual body is still, but her soul that's being torn away is screaming. So it really is like the Dementor's kiss. It takes everything that makes you, you, and leaves nothing but a husk. That's why you just fade away. When Maddie got pulled into the other world, it looks like all the bodies are in the shape of a face. So maybe there is an entity that controls this realm. Before Maddie's soul is completely taken, Dexter bursts into the room and pulls Maddie away, saving her. Somehow he got away from all those ghosts. He pulls her out of the room and they regroup for a moment. They need to shut down the system, but Maddie says, "We can't. Don't you understand? There is no system to shut down. They are the system." But Dexter insists that he has to try. He runs back into the room and plugs the USB in as fast as possible and starts loading the virus. Redtape.exe. The creature appears behind him, and just when it looks like he's going to be taken, the system shuts down. Josh's virus actually worked. Oh, never mind. The system starts rebooting on its own, and Dexter is forced to run out of there, so I guess there's no way to stop these things. He gets Maddie, and they escape from the building. Once they get outside, they turn around and look at the building, and on the roof, there's dozens of ghosts watching them. Then a plane flies overhead and crashes. It's definitely a full-blown apocalypse now. Since the virus didn't work, they have no choice but to find a vehicle and leave the city as fast as possible, just like the other survivors. They get out of the city and are sleeping in a truck on the side of the road. Maddie wakes up in the middle of the night because of the radio. There's something coming through. It's hard to hear, but this is what we can understand.
This is an emergency message from the United States Army. We have sent dispatches to assist survivors in the crisis. We have established safe zones in locations without wireless or cell phone coverage. Cell phones, computers, and PDAs are all conduits for this invasion. Dispose of all technology before proceeding to these locations.
We don't actually get to hear what these locations are. Also, he didn't mention TVs. So like I said earlier, it doesn't seem to be all technology. She gets closer to the window, and as soon as she wipes the condensation, the ghosts break the windows and start attacking them. Since they broke the glass, that means these things can affect the physical world. They should have brought some of that red tape with them. I would have taped up the whole car, at least while sleeping. Funny thing is, I found out they actually do that in the second movie. Dexter is being attacked too, but he manages to start the vehicle and hit the gas. The ghosts are hanging off the vehicle and still trying to attack them. One of them gets hit off the car when they suddenly disappear. When they check the cell phone, there's no signal. It's a dead zone. This confirms they do need a signal of some kind in order to exist in our world. Dexter throws the cell phone away and it smashes on the ground. Wouldn't it probably have been a good idea to keep that? Then you would know when you're in a dead zone or not? I guess the radio did say dispose of your electronics. The movie ends with Maddie and Dexter holding hands in the truck. It looks like they've arrived at the safe zone they heard about on the radio. There's a helicopter and a bunch of army tents set up. She says we can never go back. The cities are theirs. Our lives are different now. What was meant to connect us to one another, instead, connected us to forces we couldn't even imagine. The world we knew is gone, but the will to live never dies. Not for us, not for them. Now we can do a deeper dive into what these things are and where they came from. Let's start with Ziegler. It all started with his telecom project. They made some kind of system like a radio or router that could send and receive all kinds of different frequencies. There's many different kinds of frequencies used to communicate, and basically a wider band is able to transmit more complex information. Ziegler said that his was super wideband, and they found frequencies they didn't even know existed. Somehow, through these unknown frequencies, they were able to tap into the afterlife, or possibly purgatory. So basically, the easiest way to understand this is Buddy invented 5G and it opened a portal to the afterlife. At first, the phenomenon was confined to the campus where Ziegler's system was. He was using the red tape to keep them confined. But then, Josh hacked into the system and let them out. From there, the entity spread everywhere using the internet. I think that's what these strange live streams were. These are people now trapped in the afterlife. After Stone had his soul removed, he appeared on Tim's computer. But this was before his body had completely died. So his soul was already in the other world, which means his body really was an empty husk. When it comes to light, humans can only experience a tiny fraction of the full light spectrum. The same with sound. When it comes to pulse, normally we wouldn't be able to see these creatures or interact with them because they exist in another frequency. or dimension. But now, through the super wideband system, they now have a medium to communicate and interact through. They need the presence of Wi-Fi or a cell phone signal in order to manifest in our world. That's why the lady in the city told them to get to a dead zone. How someone figured this out is a mystery. There's also a short scene of a guy posting these instructions with a piece of red tape on it. It says, sealing a room. 1. Doors and windows must be airtight. 2. Don't forget keyhole. 3. Disconnect computer. 4. Hide. So people were figuring all this out on their own, I guess. There is a good reason for the tape being red. The original film is Japanese, and for many centuries, Japanese people have believed that red represents blood and the power of the sun. They also believe it can protect from evil, which explains its use in the original movie. In Pulse, they give the explanation that the red tape can block a specific part of the spectrum that the ghosts need to transmit. So they took the original idea and put a little bit of a spin on it to fit the movie better. Remember earlier when I wondered if Josh used the tape to trap the entity in his room? Well, they actually do that in the original movie. Use the tape to trap entities in rooms or houses. So that is probably what he did. Probably one of the most unsettling scenes in the movie is the purgatory where everyone is trapped. Is this what awaits us all? The idea that there's no heaven or hell. We are doomed to exist forever in a twisted nightmare, craving the one thing we don't have: life. Now that they have found a way to take over the mortal world, they won't give it up easily. A theory about this film is that the reason the spirits start to come through is because after countless years, purgatory is full. And because of Ziegler, they were now able to overflow into our world. So we know what these ghosts are now. They are people that have died. We also know where they came from: the afterlife, or purgatory. The frequency idea, even though it wasn't executed perfectly, is a great concept. I think the original and this movie are really ahead of their time. The themes of this film are very obvious: loneliness caused by technology and the internet. A new kind of communication that's supposed to connect us even more makes us lonelier than ever. Even the idea that they can only exist where there's a Wi-Fi or cell phone signal. Sounds like my brother. In the original movie, the black shadows must be a reference to the shadows left on the ground and walls after the nuclear explosions in Japan. The visual is not as significant in the remake since it's not a Japanese film or set in Japan, but it's still interesting. I think it could have been tweaked slightly though to make more sense. The best explanation we get is that without your will to live, your body is just a shell and wants to die, either by taking your own life or eventually turning to ash. If Josh and Stone didn't have a soul, it explains why they acted so strange. And like Maddie said, it didn't even seem like him anymore.
I can't take the pain.
I find it impressive that the original, and by extension this movie, really hit the nail on the head. It doesn't feel like a 1980s movie that tried to be futuristic and got it way off. The story of Pulse could still work today exactly the way it is. It would be as relevant now as it was then. I might just be a sucker for this movie because I love the concept of a device that can tap into frequencies we didn't know existed, and it somehow opens up a gateway to the other side. And that other side is ominous and terrifying. I feel like it has some similarities to the premise of Event Horizon. Maybe there's some things we're better off not knowing. If the ghosts are just people, why do they attack the living? In the original film, the ghosts are also spirits of the afterlife, stricken with grief and loneliness. When they come into contact with a living person, they either take their own life or eventually turn to ash. It's said the feeling of the spirits' immense loneliness and pain, along with the existential dread and realization that this is what awaits them, makes them lose their will to live. So the ghosts aren't actually attacking people at all. They're just lonely and crave human attention. In Pulse, it actually seems like they take your soul, so they're a little more malevolent. The spirit that attacks Josh, Maddie, and Izzy seems especially evil, trying to purposely terrorize people. Possibly the most important question is, how do you defeat them? Well, you would have to eliminate all kinds of wireless signals, then destroy all computers that were connected to the internet because spirits could be hiding there. And if it was reconnected to the internet at some point, the same thing would happen all over again. Problem is, we can't get close enough to destroy those wireless systems and computers without getting taken by the spirits. In the second film, they're able to wear full red suits with red eye drops and glasses, and this fully protects them when outside. This would allow them to shut down the wireless systems, but the second movie sucks. Typical late 90s, early 2000s sequel. Back then, if a movie did good, there would be like 7 more you never heard of that went straight to VHS or DVD. And they would all come out in like the same year. Literally Pulse 2 and 3 came out in the same year, 2008. Off the top of my head, I can remember that From Dusk Till Dawn 2 and 3 also came out in the same year, 1999. They used to just give away movie rights to anybody. The second film is so bad. Like, green screen bad. Overall, I think the original, Cairo, is the better film of the two. It has one of the creepiest scenes of all time. But I did enjoy Pulse and some of the ideas they added. I don't think Pulse is a bad movie. I just like the original more. I think all the scenes with Maddie's professor could have been cut. And I think they should have just let Josh's death be the opening jump scare instead of showing the creature right away. Having it start with Josh's death would allow the mystery to build much more. And we wouldn't know what the creatures are right off the bat. One other thing that bothered me about this movie was the CGI. It was the new cool thing in the early 2000s, but most of it aged like a steaming pile of goat shit. There's so many scenes in this movie where if they had just left more to the imagination, it would have made it that much creepier. Like the scene when the face comes over the edge of the bed. Instead of including the weird light effect, just have it cut. You tell me what's more effective, ending with this? Or getting rid of some of the crazy effects and ending it like this. Leaving the mystery of what happened would be better, which is what they did in the original. So like I said, the original is definitely the superior film, but Pulse does add some interesting ideas, and to be honest, it actually does a little bit of a better job explaining exactly what's going on. In Pulse, Ziegler tells us about the wideband system and gives us at least some inclination of how it happened. In the original, we pretty much have no idea. I think the perfect movie would be a mix of the two. The more simplistic, creepy atmosphere of the original with some of the story aspects of the remake.
The last thing you ever want is for them to get to you.
That's my video on Pulse. This was a movie that always stuck with me and crossed my mind from time to time, so I'm glad I finally got around to making a video about it. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I would give it a 6.5. It has some great visuals and great concepts. It just couldn't quite put it all together in the perfect package. On the other hand, I would give the original an 8 out of 10 for having a more clear vision of what they wanted to get across. The mood and atmosphere of the original is irreplaceable. If you haven't seen Pulse and you're a fan of horror movies from the 2000s like 1408 or The Grudge, I would definitely recommend it. If you're more into Japanese style stuff or just really love horror movies, I would watch the original. It's much slower paced, but it's worth it. I plan on covering some more of my favorite horror and supernatural films, but as always, if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. It helps the channel and I really appreciate it. As always, an extra shout out to all my members for going the extra mile and supporting the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.